This is the Week in Sustainability from Sustain.Life. It's where our team of sustainability experts and practitioners share commentary to keep you up to date on developing stories and news.
Hi, I'm Hannah Sotsky, Sustainability Data Analyst at Sustain.Life. Today, I'm welcoming back to the podcast our Senior Service Designer, Danielle Aaron. Would you mind refreshing our audience on your role at Sustain.Life?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me back, Hannah. My role at Sustain.Life is focused on understanding the needs and challenges of our current and also our prospective clients, and then translating those insights directly into the design of our tool. So day to day, I work with our client-facing teams. I conduct direct user research, and I collaborate with sustainability experts like yourself to design solutions that are both intuitive and also support sustainability best practice.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining the Week on Sustainability. We had two stories this week. Last week, Nick and Devin covered California's new climate bills and will stay in California to cover the new refiled lawsuit against 5 major oil companies. And then we'll hop over to New York, where Climate Week just kicked off. So California Governor Gavin Newsom and Attorney General Ron Bonta announced on Friday that they are suing 5 major oil companies for half a century of deceptive practices. The suit is targeting BP, ExxonMobil, Chevron, Shell, and ConocoPhillips, as well as their trade group, the American Petroleum Institute. Their grievances are pretty well spelled out. These companies are substantially responsible for accelerating climate change. They've known the potential risks for decades. They've chosen to conceal harms, mislead consumers, and campaign against renewable energy in pursuit of profit.
Right. Last month, we saw a court affirm climate science in Held v. Montana, but this is a very different case, isn't it, Hannah? Have other states done this before?
So Rhode Island filed a very similar lawsuit against Shell, and the city of Baltimore and Honolulu also have filed similar suits. The piece that makes this lawsuit different is that California is just the largest economy by far to take this kind of step. And the background evidence is really clear. Each of these huge companies were individually made aware of their products' harms on multiple occasions between 1950s and 1980s. And then evidence really sort of became super conclusive with the IPCC's first report in 1990, and then the formation of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in 1992. These events really mark the moment where oil companies who had their own internal researchers confirming all of the risks of fuel combustion, that's when they really begin their campaign of denial and misleading messaging to the public.
Absolutely. And it's become quite clear over time that those first arguments from oil companies against immediate action, like the slowing of fuel combustion, were clearly very early roots of today's larger climate denial. So statements back then, like global temperature fluctuations are normal and a warmer world could be more healthful, are still a part of common discourse today. And like you said, however, now we know that those statements being made by companies like ExxonMobil were put forth while their internal researchers were saying very much the opposite.
Yeah, it's tough to read those parts. It reminds me a lot of the internal documentation we saw from the Volkswagen diesel scandal.
Right. And Volkswagen had to pay a lot of money for their violations. What do you think the outcome of this lawsuit will be?
Yeah, it's tough to say because we're so early. We know California is asking for a jury, and looking to past examples, it seems like they might get that. State judges have been ruling against these oil companies in the similar lawsuits, and the Supreme Court has rejected their appeals and sent them back to the state. So their next step is going to bring them to jury trial and in the filing state. The hope is that the jury, full of state and city residents, will be more favorable towards public health interests. And the companies do still have an option to settle, in which case California is asking for an abatement fund that would pay for a lot of the environmental damage that the state has already faced in our worsening climate.
Interesting. Well, I'll look forward to following the updates as we continue to share them here. And then moving to the other side of the US now, New York City kicked off their 15th annual Climate Week this past Sunday. And as leaders in business, government, academia, and nonprofits began gathering, so did about 50 to 75,000 protesters marching to end fossil fuels.
Yeah, 50 to 75,000 is so impressive. Climate Week consistently draws protests, and their message is clear. We've talked to conclusive ends about the strategies that will solve this problem and get us to net zero, the next step is to do it.
Right. And excitingly, apparently Sunday's protests were the largest climate demonstrations in the US since the start of the pandemic. And in addition to that, with protests planned across 54 additional countries, global turnout is expected to near about 1 million people. So both mighty in numbers and also strategic in timing. It's great to see that climate activists are putting the pressure on as world leaders are also gathering this week for the UN General Assembly and then Wednesday's UN Climate Ambition Summit.
Yeah, impressive turnout this year feels like a reaction to what has been the hottest year on record. And more people are feeling that natural systems are not waiting for us to take action.
Right. Reading articles this year about record-breaking heat, wildfires, studies like one in particular stood out, the Stockholm Resilience Center's modeling of the planetary boundaries have definitely all made me want to raise my voice.
Right. I remember that. There are 9 planetary boundaries that sort of keep the Earth system in balance. Was it 5 or 6 boundaries that we've already surpassed?
Yeah, it was 6 of the 9 that are now transgressed, and pressure is increasing on all of the others except for ozone depletion.
Yeah. Oh, it's okay. That's really scary. Seeing ozone depletion as the planetary boundary that's facing the least risk really makes me kind of optimistic. The ozone is well on its way to being fully repaired, and that's fully due to successful science-informed policy and collaborative action. So it can be done. Hopefully, protests like this will speed us along. And Danielle, thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you, everyone, watching and listening.
Sustain.Life is the leading and most comprehensive sustainability software on the market. To learn how we can help your company measure its emissions and take climate action, go to Sustain.Life. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this show on our YouTube channel or your favorite podcast platform. Thanks for tuning in. See you next week.